united in diversity. We are very heterogeneous in our opinion.
If we do not renew our partnerships with the rest of the world, Europe will not be relevant.
We can make it if we are together as Europeans.
Do you genuinely believe that countries will manage to reach these very ambitious targets?
Good afternoon, and welcome back to Politico's Tech and AI Summit. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. My name's Aoife White, and I'm Politico's Technology and Competition Editor. This afternoon, we're going to take a deeper dive into some of the issues we think will be critical for the coming months. It won't surprise you that we're focusing heavily on AI, and since that's a huge topic, we're coming at it from several different angles. We'll be taking the high-level view on policy, looking at the EU's AI Act and other global initiatives and what gaps or emerging issues there might be that could need a regulatory response. And we'll be looking at one immediate issue in how AI is being used in the workplace, where EU regulators are already looking at what might need to be done to clarify what employers and workers can do here. We'll also have deep dives on AI and cyber defense and AI in healthcare. But just before that, we'll have a short discussion with some of Politico's ACE tech reporters. Before we kick off, I'd like to thank our partners for making this summit possible, our leading partners Amazon and Microsoft, and our presenting partner Google. A few housekeeping rules. We like debate. Please talk about us on X or the social media of your choice. Our X hashtag is #PoliticoTechAI. Some sessions will include a Q&A for our audience here in the room. Those sessions are indicated on our program, which is online, and our moderators will let you know when there will be questions from the audience. As a general rule, we ask you to raise snappy questions, avoid statements, and indicate who you are and which organization you represent. During our networking breaks, make sure you check our Pro and Research and Analysis division and all the installations in the networking area upstairs. Now, we will hear from our in-house Research and Analysis division to present their latest report on AI. It is now my pleasure to welcome Politico's Intelligence Analyst Nisa Khan and Research and Data Analyst Amanda Crayley.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda Crayley, and I have the distinct pleasure of being joined on stage by my colleague, Nisa Khan. Nisa and I are a part of Politico's new Research and Analysis division. Our team is comprised of analysts with specialized expertise who leverage the power of Politico's newsroom and rich legislative data from Politico Pro. Nisa is the author of a super interesting report that was just published yesterday on AI governance, and we're here to discuss it with you briefly.
Thank you for the introduction, Amanda. Our report, Voices in AI, delves into governance efforts in AI and its implications for the digital landscape. We look at key rapporteurs in the European Parliament to ministers, as well as those shaping and working with AI. In a minute, we will discuss our key insights.
Let's dive into the data. What are we seeing at the national and European level? What are some of the things that you've been observing?
So, as we can see in the slide behind me, the European Parliament's plenary adopted the landmark AI Act on the 13th of March. However, this was fraught with different challenges as political groups stressed the need to protect fundamental rights, especially around the issue of remote biometric identification, which they stressed the need for AI systems to ensure that fundamental rights and systems cannot predict a person's ethnic, religious, or political affiliation. However, member countries such as France and Germany stressed the need that heavy-handed regulation would stifle Europe's innovation. Looking outside the EU, the UK has a different approach. The UK understands that this is an emerging technology with emerging risks. Therefore, they have set up specific institutions to understand AI's capabilities, as well as working with specific institutions to create context-specific rules and regulations for this technology.
So, based on this data, what are some of the key challenges you've been observing?
Yes, as the slide behind us shows, that technological breakthroughs are moving faster than governance efforts. Another key challenge is that the rules and regulations need to be enforced and implemented by, sorry.
You're doing great. There's a lot of detail. There's a lot of ground to cover.
Sorry, I will start again. There are two key challenges that we came across in this report. One of them is that technological breakthroughs are moving faster than governance efforts. And the second one is that the rules and regulations of the AI Act need to be enforced and implemented, especially when they overlap with existing regulations such as GDPR. GDPR and the AI Act states that it will not interfere with GDPR. However, organizations in the field have noticed that organizations using personal data are subject to overlapping compliance obligations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nisa, for sharing some of these highlights. We're really keen for all of you to read the report. If you're interested in reading this full report and learning more about what we do at the Research and Analysis Division, I encourage you to scan the QR code, look us up online, or find us upstairs at the conference mixer afterwards. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I thought I'd have an introduction. Sorry. My name is Jeff Bullwinkel with Microsoft. I serve as our head for corporate external and legal affairs for the EMEA region. It's great to be here with all of you today. And I think that was just a wonderful backdrop from Amanda and Nisa with this report, reflecting, I think, among other things, that AI definitely is here and it is the moment of AI. But I think it's also worth reflecting on the fact that AI really is nothing new. We've been talking about it for over 70 years, starting, I think, with Alan Turing. It's one of those things that has been in our lives, I think, for some time as well. We use it every day in the context of analyzing information in business, in the context of doing research in the lab, and even in the context of trying to get the next recommendation for a good song or a movie, perhaps, to watch. So it's with us really in a very profound way all the time, but I think it's worth also reflecting on the fact this afternoon in this session that generative AI, the arrival of applications like ChatGPT and Copilot, perhaps really has changed the focus in significant ways. Only less than a year and a half ago, really shining a spotlight on AI in remarkable ways. And certainly at Microsoft, we do believe that AI is going to serve as a co-pilot, as something that's going to help to augment, to enhance effectively human creativity and ingenuity, allowing us to really focus on what we as human beings can do best, which is really creative problem solving, empathy, and collaboration. There's so much these days to talk about in terms of use cases that are positive in terms of solving some of the most challenging problems of our time, whether climate change or challenges in relation to healthcare for an aging population. And it's really exciting to think about what you can achieve in this area. And by the way, I have a book in my hand here. I wasn't here today, in fact, to talk about a book written by a colleague of mine named Juan Levista, who is Microsoft's chief data scientist for our AI for Good lab. But it's literally hot off the presses, published only about a week ago. And this is the first set of copies here in Brussels. In fact, there are some at the stand outside. Some have copies already. Some can pick up copies if you wish to. And I recommend this book because it is a great reflection of just how much promise there is for AI to be used for good in all kinds of scenarios, really, of human endeavor. And so what does this all mean for Europe? I think is worth us reflecting on today. And what I might offer at the outset is a comment that Europe clearly has what it takes to lead in AI globally, namely the technology ecosystem as well as the talent. And I think it's worth also reflecting on the fact that Europe occupies such an important role in the context of the overall global economy as a leading trading partner for over 80 countries, as a leading exporter of manufactured goods and services, as a number one market destination for inbound and outbound international investments. But perhaps most of all, Europe has what is, I think, a set of shared values that will see AI developing and helping to promote more prosperous, more inclusive, and more sustainable societies. And I think that's also a very important advantage that Europe has as well in this space. Now, I think it's worth maybe a comment on the fact that, like any other general purpose technology, AI is indeed creating a new economy in and of itself. It's not just helping current companies to prosper and grow faster, but in fact, it's creating new businesses, entirely new business categories, if you will. A new AI ecosystem is really developing. And we focus on that in terms of what is described today as an overall technology stack. There's multiple different elements that are interconnected, starting really from semiconductor chips to cloud computing, to data, after all, to foundation models, to applications, ultimately as well, distribution channels, and finally, end users. And so this has caused Microsoft, this new ecosystem, to think about our own investments in a very different way, causing us to invest more, to have broader partnerships and broader programs, perhaps, that we hope will design and promote innovation than at any other time in Microsoft's nearly 50-year history. So the promise, indeed, we think is really exciting for us to contemplate in this era. But at the same time, it's also worth thinking about the fact that every single layer of this new technology stack or ecosystem has to be successful if there's going to be opportunities for innovation, for growth, and that includes certainly what's happening here in Europe. What that means for us really is that for us to be successful as a company, every layer of the stack has to be successful as well. But indeed, Microsoft's mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. So we're focused very much on that concept in the context of what really is a new, a growing ecosystem that must be open, defined by broad and open partnerships. And we are, in fact, pleased to see that even now, we have 1,600 AI models that are sitting on Microsoft's infrastructure. So the promise is indeed quite profound, including here in Europe. At the same time, though, I think it's worth emphasizing the fact that there have been challenges. There are challenges, there will be challenges in all kinds of areas. We talked about it a bit this morning. We'll talk about it a bit, I think, more this afternoon. We worry about the safety of children online. We worry about cybersecurity as well. We worry about the integrity of elections during a year when we'll have more people casting a vote than at any other time, perhaps even in history. So how do we make sure we're going to be up to this challenge? Well, quite clearly, there's a need for new legislation. There's going to be a need for new laws. Europe is leading in that space, and we take this moment to congratulate the drafters here in Europe for developing the first comprehensive AI Act. That clearly is going to be necessary, and we look forward to seeing that implementation. At the same time, however, I think it is important to emphasize that companies like Microsoft need to step up to new responsibility as well. We announced back in 2017 a set of ethical principles around AI that govern how we think about responsible and ethical AI. We also work together with companies, including here in this room, to think about how we could work together to combat the use of AI and deep fakes in the election process, something announced just back in February in Munich alongside the security conference. It's also why we, as a company, announced quite recently a new set of principles that we call our AI access principles that really are designed to make sure that we are doing three things, that we are creating access in a way that's fair and also responsible. So what these principles are designed to really reflect is that countries around the world are able to use what we're building in a way that benefits their own economies and societies. We want to make sure that we do so in a way that is going to be fair, and ultimately that we as a company are rising to the new societal challenges that really fall upon us, given the role that we occupy today. And our own approach to this effort, whether through our original ethical principles, through the work in Munich, or through these access principles, we have tried very hard to make sure we are listening with interest and humility to the views and input from others. But this is why we have so much more to learn, including from rooms like this, where we are today. And so I'm very delighted to, at this point, open up the conversation to our afternoon session, where we have an array of experts who will help us to learn for sure, as all of us have much to learn. But thank you for the time today.
Thank you, Jeff. Hello. What should I say? I will sit. So thank you for staying with us or joining us now online or in the room. I'm Gian Volpicelli. I am a technology reporter here at Politico. I'm very glad to welcome you to the Politico AI Tech and AI Summit. So, now that our panelists are sitting, I'll just set the scene a bit. I think that what I want to get out of this panel today is understand essentially where the EU goes after approving its pioneering Artificial Intelligence Act. So the AI Act is in the book. I want to understand what the next chapter looks like, both when it comes to implementation and maybe further regulation. Sure that not everyone agrees with that in this room, but also when it comes to capture AI's innovative potential, how to get AI innovation right after that landmark achievement that is the AI Act. And I'm going to do this with a phenomenal panel. So I'll start in alphabetical order. We have Céline Keira, economist from the AI unit of the OECD. We have Malte Phillis, the lead of Amazon's engagement in EU policy on AI, especially and also other things. We have Yua Hekila, advisor on artificial intelligence at DG Connect, the European Commission's digital unit. And finally, last but not least, we have Eva Majdel from the EPP in Bulgaria specifically, who was one of the chief lawmakers in the ITRE committee, the chief lawmaker in the ITRE committee on the AI Act. There are not going to be any questions for this, so maybe express your mood with facial expressions or something like that. It's a long session, but I'd like to kick off with Eva first. So Eva, of course, you have been, first of all, one of the people who have worked the hardest on the AI Act, on delivering it, but you're also a person who I think travels a lot, speaks to a lot of stakeholders and other policymakers around the world. Can I get a sense of what the mood music is about the AI Act now? When you talk to companies, when you talk to other politicians, when you are in international fora, what's the reception you're getting there?
Good afternoon, first of all, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. Glad to join this discussion and important conversation. What's the mood? I think the mood has been different throughout the past 2.5, 3 years since we have been working on the AI Act. But today, in the past couple of months, I've been on the receiving end of most conversations ending up on a content, so to say, note, saying we understand that sometimes this could pose difficulties, specifically for some smaller companies, and particularly in Europe. But the feeling has been that this is a step in the right direction. It is a step in the right direction to basically put our European, and I would argue not just European values, of course, to protect our societies, to enhance trust, to make sure our democratic societies are, not just protected, but more importantly, we've put the guardrails to make sure that the way this technology is going to be developed, it's in a safe way, in a way that is according to those values. And I think this is broadly and largely understood. So far, I have to say, to my surprise, actually, most of the conversations do end on a content note.
Anything that jumps out as either less content or as the missing piece of the jigsaw? What's next? What needs to still be done on this?
I mean, the most important piece of the jigsaw now is implementation on one hand, and on the other hand, how the entire digital jigsaw fits together, right? Because this is not the only law that we've been working over the past 5 years, and I would say even in the past 10 years. So how all those different laws that touch the tech and innovation and digital ecosystem and sphere make sense all together. Because I do believe that in some places maybe there's an overlap, in some places maybe there's a gap. So I think looking ahead, we might be content to a certain extent with the work done, but the work doesn't stop here. Because very often what I see in negotiations room is about ticking the box that we have just done the work of this law or the next law. I think we need to be a little bit more strategic and see how this would play in the next couple of years.
So there's a bit of grandstanding there in terms of...
For me personally, yes, absolutely. I mean, it's not just about implementation, but it's about what are our next steps. And if you remember, the moment we agreed on the AI Act, the Commission came up with a couple of ideas on how to enhance innovation in Europe. And I've always argued that if you put a concrete law to provide guardrails, you should at the same time already be thinking how to support those ecosystems, because the data, we all know where Europe stands. When it comes to 8% of EU companies using AI, when it comes to our economic growth. And so if we want to make sure that we remain competitive, obviously those numbers need to change, but they would not just miraculously change. You would need to make sure you have the right playground for that to happen.
I'd like to ask you maybe afterwards, after I've done a tour de table, what that innovation might look like, how we capture it, that kind of how to get the lightning in the bottle.
Happy to come back to that.
I'm very happy, but first I want to ask, Marta, are you content with the AI Act as the people ever met?
Well, let me start maybe by saying or explaining that as Amazon and many other companies are in a similar situation, AI is such nothing new, right? I mean, we deploy AI for decades. And we do it across the company.
We are all proud.
Yeah, please be so. And there's also in the booth, our booth, you can test some of the nice things we have there. And I'm saying this because we are impacted across the portfolio when it comes to operations, when it comes to generative AI, we'll speak more about that, and so on and so forth. And how we approach this already for a while is that Amazon is a very customer-centric organization. We start from the customer. We look for what does the customer demand for, and then we develop our products accordingly. And that includes, of course, trust. I mean, trust is key for us. And that also means that, of course, guardrails and trust are linked.
Right.
And I mean, of course, we do a lot of things voluntarily. We've done them before. And now there's a law, which is also going in that direction, introducing guardrails through building trust. That was the beginning right from the start of the AI Act. And so far, we fully subscribe.
So are you content?
We are fully we subscribe to the objective of it, and
right.
and that is my next point, whether the AI Act will be a success story where other regions will be inspired.
Okay.
We don't know yet.
We don't know
yet, because many of the provisions are broad, they are general. And it will be super important and decisive how now policymakers will specify the provisions in the next month and years.
So it's about implementation again, or it's about
it's
something
about specification and implementation.
Right.
And so I can only echo what Eva Medel said. It's key and it remains to be seen. But there is an opportunity that it will be a success story.
How should that implementation look like to foster innovation? Do you think that, I don't know, for instance, is Amazon bullish on the European AI scene right now? Does it see it as a future or current hub of AI innovation and merrymaking?
Yeah, I mean, the two separate things. The one is the specification. There will be a co-regulation, intensive work the next weeks and months, right? So that's the one thing. The other one is the enforcement. You asked me about enforcement or both?
No, I ask about implementation.
Right, implementation. Well, once we have the rules, hopefully in time, because first rules will already apply end of or beginning of next year, right? So we hope that the guidance that will come from Commission and together with Parliament and Council will come in time so that we can anticipate that. If this specification will strike the right balance between introducing the guardrails or specifying them in a reasonable way while still allowing for innovation, then it will work.
What does that look like?
Well, I mean that the rules, as the intention was and is, that they target the issue, the identified risks, that they are clear, that they provide legal certainty, that they're technically feasible, that they're aligned with international standards or the work done in OECD, for example, so that then it can be a success story.
Well, let's ask one of the people who might be in charge of the implementation. Juha, how's it going? I'd like to get a sense of how you are preparing for all this implementation fest that you'll have to carry out and throw when it comes to AI Act. Everybody wants implementation to be done right, and I suppose you are at the center of some of those discussions. So what can you tell us, our partially content Malta here?
So, of course, we are working very hard on this, on the details. There is, of course, a setup of governance structures the AI office, but in addition also, of course, the AI board, and then we have the stakeholder forum and a scientific advisory body. So we are working on all these aspects at the same time. One thing that I think should be pointed out, two things maybe. First of all, these provisions will become applicable in stages. So the prohibitions will become applicable after 6 months after the entry into force. So indeed, we're talking probably about the end of the year, beginning of next year, assuming that the regulation enters into force in June after the final administrative hurdles that are still to clear. Those are still formalities, but the formalities need to be cleared. And then, of course, some of the provisions will enter into force, become applicable 12 months after, 24 months, and 36 months. So that is kind of this staged approach gives, of course, organizations time to prepare for it.
Right.
So they will get acquainted with the AI Act, its provisions, and they will be able to prepare for compliance. We've also planned for this AI Pact with a P, so companies can start implementing the provisions already on a voluntary basis, of course, beforehand. But importantly, it also gives them the opportunity to provide us with feedback. So they will be able to signal to us what issues they see in the implementation. And that kind of a two-way communication will help the organizations involved in this space to prepare for the provisions when they become applicable. As regards then innovation, that's the other point I wanted to make. It's actually nothing new as such. So our work on innovation, support for innovation, didn't start with the innovation package at the end of January. Of course, we've been working quite a lot on it over the years. We've increased our investment quite heavily. And I noticed that in public discussions, particularly I noticed in international forums, which is the aspect that I'm in charge of, I noticed that there is this perception that we only do regulation, which is of course not true. So in that regard, we've been very active. And of course, from the very beginning, for us, it was very important to keep this innovation aspect in mind. So we wanted to strike the right balance between innovation and protection. So the starting point was not to just, ban things, but to make sure that we have the conditions for innovation to thrive, for companies, startups, smaller companies, but also bigger companies to thrive in this space and create the innovation. Trust was mentioned. That is actually very important because trust is needed for the uptake of this technology, and only through uptake we have the benefits. So the sine qua non for benefits is uptake, and the sine qua non for the uptake is, of course, trust.
Right. And can I ask you a bit about how the AI office will fit in that kind of innovation pushing plan? Because it seems to actually be the public face of the EU's AI policy, but also when it comes to innovation. Since it's something that's been set up right now, I'm curious about what you see from the inner workings of it. What's going on there?
So we are in the process of setting it up. It exists already. As such, it was set up just a couple of months ago. We are in the process of course, staffing it. But it will actually concentrate the different aspects of our AI activity. So it will not just have the regulatory roles that are perhaps the most well-known, particularly in regard to generative AI, general purpose AI models, but it will also have the innovation support activities in that office, plus also the international engagement, which is increasingly important. So over the years, over the past 2-3 years, it has become evident that this is an increasingly important part of our work, but also in the partner countries and in international forums. This is getting and gaining more and more attention by the week. And all of that will be actually inside the EU office.
Right. Who is going to lead the AI office? Do we know who is going to be the honcho?
No.
Not you?
No.
Not you. Okay. It's a denial there, I think. I have just a final quick question. There was this report on the FT a couple of months ago about Canada and the Emirates trying to attract EU AI startups to their jurisdictions. luring them in with the promise of less regulation. Does that keep you up at night, that the AI Act might hobble us when it comes to international competition?
Well, there are many things in the world that keep us up in the night.
Well, yeah, this one specifically.
But this one, look, there may be some which are going. We don't know. I mean, I think that's largely speculation at the moment. We simply don't know where we are in that regard. We do think that we are creating the conditions for companies to pursue AI, to develop AI models. So particularly this AI innovation package that I mentioned is an important element, piece in this puzzle, because we are upgrading high-performance computing capacity. We are making it available to companies which develop,
the AI factories,
particularly smaller companies which develop generative AI models. So they will have better access to it. We will have better capacity because high-performance computing is actually a European success story.
Yeah.
And we are now working to make that serve the AI community better, and giving them better access to that capacity, and also giving them the support services. And then, of course, this relates to access to data and other things. And of course, this relates to other aspects which are in the AI, like sandboxes, testing. We have been dealing with testing and experimentation facilities for some time already. So this is actually a broad package which covers different aspects.
Okay, it's a whole. Yeah, I might have some questions about supercomputing, but maybe it's a bit too in the weeds right now. Now, I'm curious about, of course, the AI office is going to be the international as much as the intra-EU face of the European Union when it comes to AI. And there is a kind of little galaxy of AI safety offices or AI-focused offices that are emerging. And I'm curious what Celine thinks about it, because, of course, the OECD has been looking at AI from an international perspective for a long time. So how do all these efforts, maybe in the UK, in the EU, and in the US, fit in global AI governance? Is it something we should kind of all work together towards? Is that the next chapter, more international cooperation with like-minded countries?
I would hope so. I would hope so. So for those of you who don't know, the OECD, we're an intergovernmental organization of 38 member countries, cover all policy areas except for defense. And we started working on AI issues about a decade ago, just shy of a decade, when countries came together in 2016 and said, okay, maybe this is a technology we should start thinking about. That culminated in the 2019 OECD AI principles, which you've probably heard of. And what's very interesting today is that at that time, there was only a handful of countries that actually had national AI strategies. If you fast forward to today, according to our database of national AI policies, and you can visit it on oecd.ai, today, we document over 1,000 policy documents related to AI governance from 70 jurisdictions. So that's huge, and it's a legitimate question of how we coordinate, of how those different policies globally interoperate. And I've heard the word repeated a few times on the panel now. We used to use the other I word, which was interoperability. Now it's implementation. And so I think, there's been convergence on the what in terms of the principles, and what's great is that from those 2019 OECD AI principles, you can actually trace their codification into laws and into regulations. And so, standards like the definition of an AI system appear in the EU AI Act. As well as the Council of Europe, NIST in the US. So there's, you can trace principles into practice in a concrete way. So I guess my last point here is that although we're seeing kind of convergence on the what, very much we might see differences or outstanding questions on the how. And that's where the implementation comes in. So you're going to see AI safety institutes coming up. You're going to see different national approaches to implementing the act. What's the role of the data protection authorities? Is it going to be a new authority? So these are all questions to be thought through, I think, on a nation-by-nation level.
Right. Interesting. I think that the OECD also runs a kind of AI incident monitor, which is some kind of mechanism for people to, I think, flag and specifically also learn more about incidents involving AI. Can you give me a sense of how I mean, how that curve has been moving over the past couple of years?
Take a guess.
Yeah, I suppose upwards,
Yeah.
but how much?
Yeah, so in 2022, between 2022 and 2023 alone, there was a 53-fold increase of incidents.
How do you define an
incidents
incident?
It's a very good question, and there's actually going to be work that's going to be published in very detail.
Another leak to get.
Exactly, but you know, it's a difficult question, and countries have deliberated actually quite a bit on how you define an incident. We also define hazards, which are near incidents or near misses. But we've been this is not something the OECD has been doing in isolation. We've been doing it hand in hand with the Commission, and this is, you know, as we move towards implementation, we're doing some of the work in terms of developing the methodology, developing the definition of what an incident is, so that when the EU AI Act, right, because it's going to be part of that, so that work is going to already be done. So essentially, the way do you want details on how the incident monitor works?
I'd like to get a sense of what a standard garden variety incident is.
So I think
what's a typical incident?
Yeah, so you can go and let's say you type in, you know, education, and so there you'll see. So the way that it works is we've developed a proxy, right? And the proxy essentially is news articles from reputable media sources.
Okay, right.
So it's related to that, and so you could get, for instance, you type in education, you get an unfortunate articles on 8th graders in the U.S. that were expelled for spreading deep fake news of their classmates. So that's just one example.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And that's global, I suppose. It's not only limited to OECD countries.
That's right, they're global.
So if there's an incident in, I'm not going to try and guess what country is not a member, but no member, Romania.
If they report about it.
Yes, if there was a news article. So again, it's not perfect, it's a proxy,
Right.
But we're hoping as we implement it and grow the tool. But yeah, it's both a methodology and then you also have the platform.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. What do you think, Eva? Is it a good system to track what to do about AI next?
Well, I'm sure there's been a lot of experts that have been at the forefront developing this sort of idea, and as you said, it's a proxy at the moment. But I think we need to talk about those risks. We need to think also through that prism. We cannot just assume that we are regulating a handful of companies, which most of them very often say, well, security, trust are key for us. We would like them to do more to enhance that societal trust and to make sure that we do not erode the very foundations of our democracy with some of the risks that are out there. But very often, this technology can be in the hands of malicious actors. And this is why I think we would have to talk about those risks a little bit more.
They're not covered all by the AI Act right now, you think?
Well, I mean, it's a bit like you take a technology. I mean, you could take not the most advanced thing. I mean, we could just take a car and you could drive it on the street and get from one place to another. And you could also, you know, decide to drive into a group of people. So there will always be someone that would like to pose certain threats to our society. But that's a very different conversation than AI and innovation, but I believe we need to be talking and thinking, and certain services in member states and also at the EU level need to be developing strategies, need to be collaborating a little bit when we have cybersecurity accidents. Yeah. There's very clear protocols, what you're supposed to do, how to exchange information. And I think when it comes to AI, but even when it comes to things like disinformation, I think there needs to be a better exchange of certain accidents that happen, because very usually they would happen in one member state or in one area, and then you would see this multiplying elsewhere in a similar manner. But particularly when it comes to democracy and deepfake, this is where I think we will need to regulate a little bit more. In the AI Act, we have put watermarking requirements, which I think are a good first step. But we are already seeing the technology evolving with very capable voice and image image, video generators. So I think when it comes to the AI Act, when it comes to certain code of practices and the DSA, we need to make sure that we keep up with those developments that are happening, because trust is just fundamental for the way our democratic societies are shaped.
Right.
And we don't want to ruin that very fabric.
We reached the 20-minute mark, which means I want to actually talk about innovation now. So what's your recipe?
I think what we did.
Recipe.
I think I would need to say I need to say two things here for the AI Act, and then open it up a little bit broader. I remember very often sitting in the negotiations rooms, and people would be like, "Let's regulate the metaverse. Let's regulate ChatGPT," and I always thought, well, that's not really the way to go to go ahead. I mean, and so I think where we are today, I think it's a more balanced place. The reason why I say that is because, of course, there are rules, and there, it will be difficult for some companies to find how to properly implement and put those rules together. But for example, on generative AI, we were negotiating, and some colleagues would argue that we would need to make sure that all models are high risk. So I think to a certain extent, the version that we have now is, we could say, it's a light touch approach, because we are asking. Well, yes, we are asking for a basic set of requirements from only the very massive, powerful models. And this is part of discussion. It was a negotiation that we I believe came to a more balanced way to make sure that not every Gen AI company would fall under a high risk category. But I think there are moments also going beyond the AI Act where we need to think, particularly for Europe, where are our strengths? And this does not always necessarily mean a new set of rules and regulations. Sometimes you could enable the market. Sometimes you can remove barriers. How many years is this town talking about the Capital Markets Union? I don't even want to mention that expression anymore because we are not making any advancements. So I would like us to see how to better support financially with something like maybe a tech sovereign fund or tech and economic sovereign fund that the next commission can set up. But most importantly, where Europe's strengths are, as I said. And I think our strengths are with our industry, how to make sure that the industrial data is being used. Maybe that goes hand in hand in the way those AI factories can be used. But we will need a better strategy of where to enable and where to support. Because if those AI factories are just going to support 50 companies, it's still better than none. But how do you scale? How do you make sure that there's other possibilities? Because, as I said, only 8% of EU companies are using AI. Well, we don't need to double them. We don't need to triple them. I mean, we at least need to quadruple them in the next couple of years.
I get a sense it's all, today you're using the word first good step a lot. So we are well on our way to kind of harness innovation, but we're not quite there yet. You think we will?
I mean, there is innovation happening in Europe.
In terms of fostering it, the Commission level.
Exactly. It's just, of course, at a different scale, particularly when it comes to generative AI and AI as a whole. And so the idea here is how not to miss that wave, right? And I think there's a lot of targeted work that can be done with our small and medium enterprises, but again, at the industry level where our strengths are, whether that's automotive sector or a few other sectors. So it requires a strategic thinking and a little bit about where, apart from utilizing your strengths, where do we want to see Europe in the next couple of years? I think the conversation has to be bigger, and I like to call it the Europe of big ideas. Because one of our main strengths, and the reason why we are living so well and we refer to that way of life as the European way of life, is because we have the single market, we have the Eurozone, we have Schengen. So what's the next big idea for competitiveness?
You are there to pitch
well,
it.
yeah, of course. But it's not a single person that, I would like that we think differently, not just say, we have a set of laws, we should start from where do we want to get and how to get there.
I'm not going to ask you whether you're going to run for MEP because I guess you are, right?
No major announcements now, but I promise you I'll give you an exclusive.
I always get
when
that
there's
from
something,
anyone.
when there's something to
never get
announce, you get an
I
exclusive
have a
of
quick
that.
question. I really just need a yes and no answer, if you can. Do you think we should raise the threshold for models that are considered to be of systemic risk?
Look, as I said, I'm content with the regulation that we have right now. I think we've struck a good balance. As I've always said, this regulation should have gone hand in hand with more enabling ways for our industry and for our AI developers. What I would like to see is the AI office being a more flexible place where can see the trends and say, hey, maybe we need to change something, maybe we need to do something. So I would like to see this place as being the hub. Some would say it's just a place that would put fines. Others would say it's a place for, making sure we implement. I would like it to see again a little bit the bigger picture.
You got me there. It was a yes and no answer. Marta, what do you think? Do you think we need a similar approach as the one outlined by Eva? Would you like the AI office to be a bit more kind of mobile and flexible and kind of going with the flow of what's going on? Is that what you'd like to see when it's set up? We're not saying it's not, just imagining.
I mean, certainly the AI office will have multiple roles, and we much appreciate that the Commission is speeding up the process, by the way. That's quite intense, the work that is coming now. What we believe is important that rules are harmonized across Europe to strengthen the digital single market. And that refers, of course, to the Act as such, that is a regulation, but it also refers then to the enforcement, which you mentioned earlier. The AI office will obviously enforce across Europe for generative AI.
Yeah.
It will not enforce for other rules where there will be a lot of different authorities with different views, and they then have to come together in the AI board and align. And there we would hope that in these EU-level bodies, on that level, there's let's say that there are mechanisms, that there's a coordination so that rules are applied consistently across Europe.
Can I ask you, sorry, maybe it's not your bailiwick, but how does what the EU has started to do compare with what we have been seeing maybe in the UK? The UK has a AI safety office, which is fairly active, up and running. Do you think there is a big difference of approach there?
Well, I have to say, I don't know the UK system good enough.
Your bailiwick.
So,
but maybe you talk to colleagues. You haven't talked with colleagues?
I do talk to colleagues, and I will talk to colleagues after you put the question.
Please let me know.
And I will get back to you, as ever does.
All these exclusives promised in the future.
Yeah. No, but So the enforcement will certainly be important, and the AI office is a good approach on EU level.
What kind of people should work in the AI office?
Well, I guess it will be the European Commission.
But what do you think should?
Well, I mean, it should, of course. I mean, it's important that, and that refers to enforcement overall, that there are enough resources, that there's the literacy, that there are the skills, that people know how AI works, and that they also have an overview. You touched upon it a bit. There will be a lot of laws that will apply to AI, and the people in the AI office and elsewhere on national levels, they need to be equipped with the skills, with the resources to then understand the technology and apply the rules properly. So if that is a response,
I think it is. I have no objection to that. Juha, I'd like to get a sense of what you make of all these kind of future suggestions. Is there a case to have a kind of massive tech fund all focused on AI? Is there a case to make the AI office kind of mobile and startup-y and always changing stuff?
Well,
stuff.
One thing that strikes me in this conversation is that we are discussing whether the AI office should be more this or more than this or less than this, etc. But you haven't seen it yet. So
there isn't a lot of transparency about it.
It's in the process of being created. So I think it's premature at this stage to speculate too much whether it should be more than what it is now or less than what it is now, because you haven't seen it yet. So
I'd love to see more.
Well, you will be seeing more. I mean, watch this space. You just need to be a bit more patient, of course.
That's good.
it's something that obviously takes some time. You will understand if you look at the task, or if you remember what I said earlier about the three main aspects that it covers. So in addition to the regulatory aspects, also then the innovation aspect, also the international engagement, which, as I said, has been increasing quite significantly over the past 2 to 3 years. Then, of course, it is very comprehensive, so it covers different kinds of things. And of course, we have every interest in making it work as smoothly as possible, and as being agile and as being able to respond to the needs it has. And of course, given this, the legislative aspect, the enforcement is just one pillar of it. That's of course the most well known because it became published. It became publicly known in the context of the political agreement on the AI Act in December. So I think in this respect, at the moment, it's a bit too early to discuss whether it should be more this or that, or less so. Time will tell, and you will see then when it's up and running at full speed what it looks like, how it's working. I mean, a year from now, we will be much wiser, of course, because we will have seen it work for some time already. But of course, the seeds, it's a bit like a sourdough. You have, of course, the existing people who have been working on the AI Act, who've been working on innovation, who've been working on international in the Commission, and they will be part of the AI office.
Right.
So in that sense, it's not starting from scratch, something which did not exist at all before. So in that regard, you will of course have the experience of those people who have been there, and the staff who have been involved in these different aspects of our AI activity, be it legal, innovation, or international.
When can we expect the recruitment for the leaders to start?
I won't comment on that at this point.
There was a big letter from MEPs. You see that? Did you see that?
Yes. I mean, this is of course an office which will be part of the Commission, and
there
the
was
Commission.
also a letter about the implementation that we put forward.
I missed that. You should have linked it to me.
It's
so
public.
Of course,
I think you actually blurbed it for the newsletter. Sorry, go on.
Just wanted to say that of course we have certain rules and procedures that apply to recruitment and filling posts. So those we will of course follow in the European Commission.
Right. There was an interview we had with one of the co-rapporteurs of the AI Act who called for Oppenheimers to be hired to run the AI office. Can we expect any kind of genius-level technologies to join the AI office, you think?
Well, it's not for me to judge the level of geniuses of people out there, and I'm not.
No, but certain figures are. If you're going to, I don't know, get the whole computer science department at Oxford University, it's probably going to be that kind of stuff.
Well,
right?
I won't also comment on the quality of different universities.
Yeah, fair enough. Especially out of the EU.
But even in the EU, that wouldn't be part of my role. But there are good universities, there are excellent universities, and there are less good ones. Let me put it this way. I think what is clear is that the AI office work on the implementation of the AI Act, not just that, but in particular working on the implementation of the AI Act is a very interesting challenge for people who are interested in this kind of thing. So as has been stated already a number of times during this discussion and already before, I assume, is that this is the first of its kind. This is the first comprehensive piece of AI legislation which will become applicable. And to work on that, in that avant-garde role, it's groundbreaking new kind of thing to do. And of course, that as such is an incentive for a number of people to apply. So in that regard, of course, you can talk about first mover advantages, whether they apply or not, but I think that it has created a lot of interest. The fact that people can be working on this kind of a thing now, which is unique at the moment. Of course, others are following. One thing that we have actually forgotten in this discussion is that sometimes it sounds a bit like the EU is the only region or only jurisdiction legislating, but that's not the case because others are following suit. Canada was mentioned by you as an example. Are we worried about? Canada has an AI Data Act in the pipeline, which is actually quite similar to what we have. So Brazil has, admittedly, they say, copied part of the AI Act. That's, of course, up to them whether they want to do it or not. And, of course, I think the whole conversation changed with ChatGPT because then voices started to be heard from the US about regulating AI. So that made a big difference. And all of a sudden, I mean, Eva mentioned earlier that more recently people have been more content. And I think people are also more inclined to now see the benefits of regulating AI sensibly. And don't forget that the US passed an executive order on AI recently in the autumn. They are also, working on legislation. So the goalposts are moving. The landscape is changing from what it was 2.5, 3 years ago.
Just want to pick on one thing you said, which is, of course, that people will be, in a way, lured in by the excitement of working for the AI office. How do you think the AI office will compare and compete with similar institutions being set up in the UK, which is up and running, as we said, in the US? What's your plan to attract talent here as opposed to have it go not to big tech, but to other similar institutes?
Well, the AI office has a different mandate from safety institutes in the US, for example. Japan, the UK. Japan hasn't been mentioned. They also have a safety institute. So the AI office covers that aspect, but it covers many more things. So in that sense, it's a different kind of beast, if you like. So it cannot be directly compared necessarily because its tasks include those aspects, but so many other things. And of course, we're also talking to these safety institutes in different parts of the world.
How do you make people come to you and not to London or Washington, D.C.?
Well, look, I mean, that depends on a number of different factors, and I don't think that question can be simply answered very easily because it's a very complicated picture in many ways. It depends on where the people are based, what their interests are, etc., etc., etc. So some of these people are more mobile, others are not. But I mean, I don't think there is a single answer, one right answer to that question.
Fair enough. Okay, I'd like to get a sense, since we have 3 minutes, of, what the future of innovation looks like. Maybe, I don't know, let's ask the industry, what do you think the future of AI innovation in Europe is in the post-AI Act world?
Hopefully a good one.
Yeah, hopefully.
I think, hopefully a good one. And here, also to link what Eric, my colleague, said in the morning speech. I mean, we have a lot of engagement in Europe, and so we have also vital interest that the digital.
Are you planning to invest more money in AI companies in the EU?
In companies, well, we invest generally in Europe, and we of course partner as well.
In AI specifically.
Of course. Yeah, we do also. I mean, we have.
Not accusing you or not.
Yeah. We do research in the EU, for example. We have a lot of corporations here. We have partners. There are great startups in Europe that we cooperate with. So there are many opportunities here.
If you were to open a new AI innovation hub on the continent, including the islands, where would you open it today?
Then you would probably ask my colleague Eric, who was here this morning. I'm not taking these decisions. But as I said earlier, certainly it's key to have an innovation-friendly environment, and that will be decisive. Apart from everything else that also Eva referred to support, I mean, it's of course important that also the legal basis is right and allows for innovation.
What don't you want to see? What you don't want to see coming from the EU in terms of AI regulation in the future?
I mean, what we would suggest is that now it's the end of the legislative term, that we take a step back and think about where we stand in terms of innovation, and then prioritize the implementation of the AI Act to then have a comprehensive, proper assessment if there are gaps and what is required next. So to take that as a chance. And then to have, if something else is required, it should then be based on that comprehensive assessment. And I think that is evidence policy making, and that is certainly also then supporting innovation in Europe.
Right. Eva, any closing thoughts?
Well, it's a tough question for a few seconds,
obviously.
1 minute. But maybe I will divide it in two ways. First, what the institutions can be doing, and I think it would be good to look at all the instruments we have now at the table. And I'm not speaking about the legislative ones and necessarily the guardrails and the rules and the laws that are there, but we have instruments such as Horizon Europe and few others. We have an investment arm in the CHIPS Act that we've put forward, and in many other initiatives that are out there. And see how can we make all the things that have been there for many years now work better for the goals and aims we want to achieve. Because I'm not sure they're necessarily delivering the results we want them to see them delivering. I think we live in a very different world. Just in this past 5 years, the world has drastically changed, but it has changed over the well, in many various ways.
Right.
So we cannot keep the same instruments in the same way as we used to have them before. We need to. We have usually less money, so we need to make this money work harder and more targeted. But we need to find the right ways to do that. So I think some of those frameworks have to be updated and better thought. And then my wish would be if we have the right playing field for all the actors to come out of the mindset, both in the parliament and other institutions, as just being the referee, but starting to be the player. Because perhaps then, someone recently asked me, when are we going to have a European company that's going to be ranked around the 1 trillion millions.
Dollar companies,
yes,
yeah.
exactly. And I said, well, I mean, it would be nice if we have one, but it would be even better if we have, 100, 200, 300 that are at 1 billion.
So a lot of unicorns as opposed to a massive, I don't even know what it's called, trillion called.
Yeah, trillion. Yeah, and so it would make a lot of sense for Europe to have that, but it seems like right now the unicorns that we have on a good market day for Apple, they amount as much as the evaluation of Apple. So it would take a lot of effort, and I believe the instruments we have, they need to work better, but we also need other instruments, and most importantly, changing a little bit the mindset.
Right. Would you like to try changing that mindset from within the Commission yourself?
I've been working in the Parliament on
next mandate.
It's very interesting. I mean, I don't know how many of us are aware that the Brussels bubble discussions are not the member state discussions. So politics is local, and it's very different. So.
If you were offered the job, would you drink the chalice?
I don't have that offer on the table. So if I would ever have it, I'll think about it.
Can I be the first one to know?
Well, you've already promised an exclusive on my life, but I don't think anyone's interested, really, so...
Okay, I think that's it. We are 2 minutes late. Thank you to our panelists. Now there is a little 30-minute networking break, and then there is a fantastic panel on AI in the workplace, moderated by my even more fantastic colleague, Peter Hack. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
United in diversity. We are very heterogeneous in our opinion.
If we do not renew our partnerships with the rest of the world, Europe will not be relevant.
We can make it if we are together as Europeans.
Do you genuinely believe that countries will manage to reach these very ambitious targets?